see, but
or we can.
maybe I'll make you show it again.
I can do it in a second. Yes, let me share my screen real quick. So I was able to resurrect Marco's MR, which is about 30,000 commits behind. Just literally pushed it and was about to give it to Paul and Thomas into review. Had to go through a Tailwind migration on this one as well. And obviously the styles can be improved and whatnot, and some things are non-functional or work a little bit differently, but sorting works. Mark all is done doesn't work apparently, but this one, for example, works. And I think it's a good status quo to push and then look into it, what works and doesn't work, and then work on it in parallel, right? Yeah. So I think it's already a pretty big MR, and just getting something merged and then iterating on it is probably good, because it's also going to be behind a feature flag, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that it's flagged, it doesn't need to be of any quality.
In case you want to see something specific, let me know, but I would really push for this MR to be merged quickly, and then you can dig into it in GDKs or review apps or wherever, right? Yeah. And we already have more functionality than we had before, right? So for example, there are more actions than are currently available. Fantastic. Right? For the obvious one that or everyone wants, right? Like the OKR check-in request and etc.
I don't know that that's ever actually generated anywhere. I've never been able to make that happen. And I've tried several times. But that's great. Cool. So those are all just dynamically generated off of the actions available now.
Oh, it's the static list, I think.
Oh, is it still? Okay.
So we would have control in case we cannot generate some action. We would not need to show it, but still good first iteration. Yep.
For sure. That's awesome. Well, again, thank you, IP, for working with Marco on that. That's a heck of a community contribution to do all that. So
yeah, and I would highly recommend that as soon as we get the first release out, that we make him the MVP of the month or whatever it's called,
that's a great idea.
Yes. I mean, we could technically do it already in case we are missing one for a month or something, because he has been putting considerable effort since forever.
For sure.
Yeah.
Is that something you've done before? I'm familiar that it exists, but have no clue how to actually
I volunteer Sam. I haven't done it.
Okay. I've been through it before. Yeah, it's well, it was easy 2 years ago, but we'll see what the process is right now, right?
Cool. I got a to-do to follow up on that. So, whenever this goes out, we'll make sure to give him some love.
Absolutely.
Very cool. All right.
I noticed there's tab names and things that are different than they are now. Is this gonna are we gonna merge it? Are we gonna go through a UX review process on that? I'm just noticing that there's a few things that we might want to adjust so it at least aligns with the current one.
Yeah, to be honest, I would probably say, let's get it into a mergeable state and potentially merge it. And maybe because it's such a big thing that we maybe schedule an extra session to go through the app and define what are things before we want to enable it. The typical, what are things that we want to fix before we enable it for the employees of GitLab? What are the things that we want to fix before we, enable it on .com, etc., right? Yeah. And maybe probably more than one session as well. Yeah, that would be my recommendation. This is also how we did it on a nav, right? Back then, always did multiple sessions and then talked about it, and yeah.
Yeah, we started with a skeleton where it was here's a list of things that is the wrong list of things, and if you click on it, nothing happens, but that's known. And then we kind of would iterate from there, and that really helped keep things moving, but also keep us right. But yeah, definitely UX review before it goes anywhere, before anyone actually uses it, right?
Strongly agree with that. Yeah, and it might be reasonable that we could just start iterating towards some of the new designs off of it as well, rather than trying to bring it to exact parity before shipping it. So we got lots of options we can play with. That's awesome. All right. Jumping back up in the agenda some, there are no changes in the roadmap from when we last talked, so nothing to take a look at there. I didn't have any new research to surface. And Tanina, I think, shared out her last review. I don't believe she was able to make it. She shared out her last review last time about some of the testing she was doing on the language and placement for the project switching experience. So I guess we're into looking at active projects. Amelia, you had some things here about the notifications design?
Yeah, so I know we're talking with Thomas a little bit about how to actually build the settings, and it looks like we're gonna probably have some kind of a spike or something next milestone to help make those decisions. But something I keep running into as I'm trying to make some of these design decisions is how we're actually going to build this out, because that impacts, I think, how I would put some of these designs together. And maybe you all have figured this out and you talked about it elsewhere, and I just am not aware of it. So I just wanted to ask the question here, because I know I saw that the draft MR about pulling all of the existing email notifications kind of into the UI. And then that one got closed. So I don't know if we're doing that anymore. Are we keeping the two kind of systems separate and just improving the to-do system? Are we going to try to combine them so it's all one system? I guess I'm just curious if we've made a decision on that. And if we haven't, like what we need to do to make that decision, because some of those things will impact how we're making some of these design decisions. So I just kind of wanted to, like, again, maybe you all have talked about that someplace else, but I haven't heard that decision. So I was just wanting to check in on where we're at with that, or what we need to do to make some of those decisions.
Unless this has happened in another room, I don't think we have a full. No one has a full picture of it right now, right? Like I think that's where we really want to be. Is what we do want to get. There's. I talked about this with Thomas earlier. I talked about it with Jeff earlier. Like, I think we need to start looking at, what can we do and how can we get there from that technical perspective, right? Like, it's a really difficult thing to figure out. Like, even to figure out where to start. The end goal, it seems, we still want to have notifications and to-dos be a thing. Thomas mentioned earlier today that like even maybe that's complicated because you can get a notification for something that isn't actionable, and in that case, is it a to-do or is it just a notification? So then are they again separate things? I think there's a lot to answer there.
Strongly no. The next step we do after this is going to be renaming to-dos to notifications. Right. Okay. We might come back to having like personal task management in GitLab in the future, but we're going to free up the name to do to give space for something that is actually task management, right? Where you create your own, you can break them down, you can assign them, all the stuff that you would realistically do with work items.
So yeah, I guess that works that way. If everything becomes a notification, that works. But if everything became a to-do, it wouldn't, because you don't necessarily have something to do, right?
Yeah.
Other than maybe read it. But yeah, so there's little questions like that definitely need figuring out as well. I think the main thing is that settings thing, because if we can pair up the two settings so that you're getting that part of it as closely matched to each other as possible, it should make the rest easier in theory. But I think we do need to do a lot of like start throwing some spaghetti at the wall, right? And seeing what works. I don't want to speak for all of engineering. What's everyone else's thoughts on this, right? Like on starting to play about with things and seeing what works.
Yeah, a lot of what you said, but also on the like on a database level speaking, like is it the same like a to-do as it is today? Is like its own little state machine where it's like not done, and then finally it's done, and between that it's pending, and eventually it's gonna be snoozable and all these things. And it's kind of hard to decide without trying it if on a database level we just want to make the notifications that are now emails, like put them into the same table, but do they then behave the same? Do we even want a notification that doesn't affect yourself to be snoozable? So that's that's all very spider web of decisions, and it would get a little bit easier, I think, to play with all of that after we have the Vue implementation plus all the GraphQL, and we familiarize ourselves with that, because then it's easier to experiment. Because I could see a solution where on the database level, these are two different things and they behave differently. Like maybe a notification doesn't auto-resolve after an issue is closed, all these details, and just kind of join these two things for the user on the front end. But that is all very many balls in the air, let's say, and one of them is the Vue to-do app, to maybe settle that down, and then it's a bit more clearer what we can do, want to. That's my side of things.
Does this affect the settings though? Like in theory, the settings layer should be so far abstracted from the UI that whether we're sending it through GraphQL or through HAML is almost irrelevant, right? Like, it's the amount of to-dos we're sending out through the system. I'm using all the wrong words here, but you you get what I'm saying, I think. Like the thing we talked about, there being a specific configuration where you get the same options as you do for notifications and to-dos, but it's like legacy mode, I think Jeff called it, where like you still get the same to-dos that you would have got before. Like you don't get the to-do for like that epic thing that you were talking about, right? Not the epic. Okay, I'll check in. Yeah. Like you can opt into that using settings if you want to, but you can also not opt into it. Or do we just let everything through and then you can filter them out using the filters? I don't know. I'm just bringing more questions rather than answers. I think these are things we need to figure out, though. This is what I'm saying. Like I want to start playing with them as soon as we can. Do we need that Vue implementation first, though, or is it playable in a data layer somewhere?
I'm not sure. I was still thinking about it.
Sam, you had mentioned that Jesse Young might be able to help out with this. Has there been any further conversation on that in terms of like having more engineering power behind like the overall architecture?
No, nothing further. The way it's been described is Jesse's available because Jesse's always available to us, right? Like if we need help with big scary problems, that's what Jesse's there to help with. She's not there for us to be able to say, here's a problem, go solve it. She's there for us to say, here's a problem we have, help us solve it, kind of thing. That's not to say she won't do the work, but we can't rely on that, right?
Well, if I were to describe the problem that is notifications, big and scary are words that I would use.
Oh, so. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely something that falls in that wheelhouse. I think we've not gone to Jesse yet because it's, to be honest, if she asked what the problem was we needed to solve, I'm not sure I could answer that question in a meaningful way. Maybe we just bring her into the next discussion we have on this and let her kind of filter in and come up with her own questions. But yeah, I'll reach out to her this week and see where we go from there.
I mean, maybe that could be a good target from some of these like spikes and explorations that we're doing. It's less to even like validate a technical approach, but it's enough to be able to have a really good conversation with principal engineer about like how we should be approaching these things. It's like, this is what we're seeing. This is what we're trying to solve for long term. How do we get there?
Yeah, the how is the big scary bit, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I think we all like generally know where we want this thing to end up. It's just like, what do we do with the rat's nest of the current implementation to allow us to get there?
yeah.
Very cool.
Are we blocking you at the minute, Amelia?
No, it's just, I think when I'm trying to figure out some of these like settings questions and whatever, just how we're building it would kind of impact, what controls we're going to need and stuff like that. And so it's a bit chicken and egg, I guess.
Yes.
But no,
Yes,
I'm not,
definitely.
I don't feel like blocked because I really just wanted to check in on where we were at. So I make sure that I wasn't missing any information or
Yeah.
that I wasn't, if y'all needed something else from me in order to make some of these decisions. I just wasn't sure if we had talked about that recently. So I'm not necessarily feeling blocked as long as I'm not blocking the team. But I think I'm aware that at some point, y'all are going to be ready and you're going to need a bunch of design work ready to go. And I want to make sure I have all of that ready for you when you get to that point. So I think I'm just trying to make sure I keep that conversation moving so that I can have everything ready for y'all when you need it. I'm not holding you back when you get to that point.
Okay, makes sense.
Cool. Awesome. That's the design side then. On the development side, IP showed us the demo, which is great. Voiced something for Taina since she's not here today. She is interested in running some surveys of the existing to-do user base to understand their current sentiment and how they use it and how they think about it as a baseline for evaluating the changes that we're going to be making over the coming months. She wants to do this by showing one of the little broadcast toast pop-up messages that links out to a Qualtrics survey, and was hoping to be able to launch that, looks like by next Monday. So I think in terms of turning these things on, like it's just purely something that we do in the admin area. I don't know who does it, but we could find whoever that is and make that happen. Any concerns about showing that in the product next week? Probably run it for maybe a few weeks and turn it off.
How do we get people to see it? Because I
Well,
know that
that'll be the problem.
nobody
It's
uses
not going to get a lot of adoption.
nobody
Like, yeah,
uses it.
where are we gonna put it? Like on the to-do page
On the
and
to-dos
lose
page.
like 99% of all users who are already
Yep.
not using it? But wouldn't these 99% be the more interested audience? Or like, I don't know, it's kind of very biased set if you only ask the people who still use it. Like,
Could we add it to
sorry.
the email templates as well, maybe? Like, obviously not a toast that pops up because like it's email, but like something in there says, "Hey, we noticed you don't use to-dos." Potentially, obviously we
That's
don't
an
know that.
interesting idea. I'm always nervous to touch email because it feels like you need a lawyer to review everything to see if you're like stepping on the toes of GDPR.
Plus linking to an external third-party site. I would not
Exactly.
do that on a short notice. We might kind of
Right.
skip over some security step we're not even aware of. So if we like to the
Yeah,
email
good point.
template, which goes out a million times, and
Yeah, I forgot it's Qualtrics, isn't it? We're not even
Right.
Yeah, it's not internal. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be my only, because if we're getting people's feedback from that are using the to-do list currently, maybe everybody says it's okay, and then once we start messing with things, they're going to say we hate it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's fair.
And that's not the customers probably that we're targeting the changes towards. So I think it would be great to get a baseline metric, but how to get the right one and to get across the users, I think would be I'm not sure if we have a plan for that, do we?
Yeah, we're almost guaranteed not to get any responses of like, I hate it so much, I never use it. Like, well, how did you see this?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's a good point. I'll share that with Dana, see if there's some other places that we could surface this in the product. So there's got to be some other places that are relevant where we would capture people, potentially just the entirety of the your work area.
Is this like a
in there.
banner that will appear?
It won't be the banner style. It'll be the little like white notification toast.
Okay.
So it is less intrusive than the like giant purple banners that we put in for things like breaking change notifications. Cool. Any other updates on the development side? Anything else we needed to chat about? Cool. I think we already hit on this one discussion topic that like Sam and I chatted this morning about this issue, and we want to get something into the next milestone for folks to get their hands dirty with. And hopefully that'll give us the answers we need for like finalizing the designs and moving on.
Lots of experimenting, seeing what works, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a tough project to be like, we're going to hand the entire code base over to a new team and then radically overhaul it. Like, there's some ramp up period that's necessary for this.
These are the big scary projects this team always gets, though, right? Like,
it's exciting.
You know,
at least we have the emotional maturity to handle it.
Yeah. if we can get through the feedback issue for the navigation, we can get through anything, right?
There you go.
That was awful.
Yeah, I read that about 2 weeks after I joined, and I told Austin, I was like, I was clearly just enjoying my job too much and just needed to take it down a notch. It's a very spicy thread.
I want to print it out and make it like a coffee table book. Like,
there you go. There you go. That would be fun.
Yeah. And then never read it, because that's what you do with coffee table books and feedback issues.
Ooh, anything else y'all wanted to touch on today? Awesome. I think this milestone ends this week. Is that right? 17.5 starts next week.
So yes and no. So this is a 5-week milestone. So we've said when it's a 5-week milestone, we do everything in 4 weeks, and then that 5th week is for you to go and do whatever you want.
Okay.
So end of this week is the end of the 4th week. So that's the yes, this is the end of the milestone. But the no is that there is still another week of development. But I would encourage everyone to go do something that they want to do for that week, right?
I will try to work on personal productivity stuff, because for the first 3 weeks of this milestones, I took my 5th week, right? I played the 5th in the first 3 weeks. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one, Lucas. You've took your week already.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's good for me, because I thought I had to have the next milestone plan ready at the end of this week. So fantastic. But either way, I'll probably start pulling that together this week. So watch for any comments or questions about like what should or shouldn't be in the next planning issue. Cool. Well, thank you all so much. I hope you have a great afternoon.
I'll
see you later.
Take care, everyone.